Hi there, friends. I'll come in here with a quick note to let you know that the first global Product Owner Summit organized by the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast is coming soon. To know more, check out the bit.ly/Product Owner 2023. That's bit.ly/Product Owner 2023. That's all one word, all lowercase. And stick around to the end of the episode to know more. But for now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Team Tuesday. This week we have with us Meena Venkatraman. Hey, Meena, welcome back.
Hey, nice to be back.
Absolutely. So Tuesday is Team Tuesday here on the podcast. But before we dive into the teams, do share with us, Meena, what's your or the book that most influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Okay, so this is a very tough question, self-confessed bookworm, read a lot. Picking that one book was hard, but if I go back, it takes me back to the role, right? Like now that the Scrum Guide has made the Scrum Master role as an accountability, what we actually have is a team level coach. And what I think is very important is to have a holistic understanding of agility. And one book that really helped me with that was Sooner, Safer, Happier. I think just like we tell our teams to be T-shaped, it's important for Scrum Masters to be T-shaped as well. Like you have that broad experience and at the same time, you have deep expertise in your field. And so it's really important to understand the various facets of product development, right? So I would recommend Sooner, Safer, Happier because it brings the 12 principles that we have in Agile to life and talks about it in terms of patterns and anti-patterns. So I refer to it often. I actually have it on my bookshelf. Take it out sometimes and have a look. So yeah, that's the one book I would highly recommend.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link on the show notes so that people can go and find it easily. So obviously, as we learn about being a team level coach, as you described it, as Scrum Masters, we very often also meet teams that are very hard to work with for whatever reasons. Could be, systemic reasons, could be some relationship topics inside the team. We don't know. Teams have a million different ways to be dysfunctional and eventually to even self-destruct. And that's one of the stories that we want to investigate with you today, Meena. We want to dive into the universe of that team, understand what was the small little things that started together over time that ultimately led to problems. So tell us that story, Meena.
Okay, so there was this one team I was coaching like a few years ago, and they never really took off. Typically, I go to a team and I see that, there's ways in which teams evolve, right? You've got the typical forming, storming, norming, performing. But this team was stuck in a cycle. So they started as a two-person team.
What kind of cycle was that?
So I was called to coach this team, and they were a lovely team. I got on very well with the product owner and the two developers in the team when they started. And then I started noticing this pattern. What would happen is we would have our Scrum events. Things would go really well. Everybody would be nice. And then I would have my one-to-ones and I would get lots of feedback from the team, like I typically meet the teams, everybody once at some cadence. And then
this was feedback they were not sharing in the Scrum or Agile ceremonies, right?
They weren't sharing feedback with each other and they were depending on me to do it, So I
or they were kind of leaning on you. Is that what you meant? Like they wanted you to share that
forward. They wanted me to go share feedback with each other. So, like they would say, and typically they would, if they were to share feedback about a different person, they would caveat it, like very heavily. Oh, I don't mean to say this about this person, but this is what happened. And I said, but have you shared this with them? And then what I did notice was that, in this team, the psychological safety of the group wasn't quite there, mainly because they had mistaken that, you have to be really nice. So they were not having the hard conversations that were needed.
So
to
was it that so when you say the psychological safety wasn't there, I understand, and I want to double check that you mean that they were afraid of sharing the feedback directly, but they were perfectly okay if you were the one sharing that feedback.
So yes, so this goes back to what psychological safety is, right? Like going back to what Amy Edmondson wrote in her book Fearless Organization. It's the degree to which we manage interpersonal risk. Now, if I'm talking to you, Vasco, there's a risk between the two of us, right? So I'm managing that risk. I want you to think well of me, right? And if teams are too nice, sometimes that niceness gets in the way. And I think psychological safety is sometimes mistaken for niceness, but it's not. Like you can't just being nice to each other is not what creates it. You should be able to have those hard conversations. And I think conflict brings people too close together. So sometimes in the retrospectives, what used to happen was the technical challenges around delivery would get discussed, like, like, oh, we didn't deliver this, our PRs took very long, maybe we need to do this. But the interpersonal challenges, like maybe people not showing up on time, or somebody missing an important meeting, would never get spoken about. So it was easy to talk about, like work, but it was not so easy to talk about the other things. And that's where the team was expecting me to do it, which I didn't do
And
because
when you say it was easy to talk about work, I imagine you mean that it was easy to talk about technology choices and maybe the
correct.
content of user stories, but not necessarily how the work got done, right?
How the work got done, and if there was conflict between people, like, when you work in a team, you might not necessarily get along with everybody. How do you deal with it then? Do you just brush it under the carpet, or do you live with it? Nothing is good or bad, right? It's just that, what do you do in that situation? So if something's really bothering you, do you take action? So this particular team wasn't very good at giving each other feedback on those little things that were annoying each other. So they
And
would,
your interpretation was that there was lack of psychological safety. So I want to dive deeper into that, because that's a very important topic for us, right? Because we need
yeah,
to facilitate that
correct.
constructive conflict. We've talked a lot about the five dysfunctions of a team here on the podcast. And one of
Mhm.
the most critical anti-patterns is the fear of conflict, right? So how did you go about creating your own mental model as a Scrum Master? So I imagine you were having this one-on-ones and getting that feedback and noticing, hey, they aren't sharing this. Like, how did you get to the point where you said, oh, this is because they are afraid of creating conflict? Like, how did you get to that conclusion?
So I got to this point because I noticed that pattern where they would share with me one to one, but not necessarily to each other, about specific things, not about everything, about specific things. Like, for example, there was a team member who found it really hard to ask for breaks in the middle of a long meeting. It was a challenge for him, right? But he shared that with me, So what I did was facilitated these conversations. That's how I went about it. I said, shall we talk about this as a group? And tried to create that environment where these things moved to the center stage, rather than just being uh, pushed to the edges. Because ultimately, I think the small things become big things. We think they're small things, but nothing small. If it bothers you enough to come and speak to me about it, it's not a small thing. That's how I
And
see it.
absolutely. And the rate of divorce in many countries should show exactly what that means in practice, right? Small things become big things if we can't talk about them, either because we're afraid or because we just lack the communication skills. And that's
Mhm.
also another thing that I wanted to check with you, right? Because a lot of the times it might be because of psychological safety, but in the world we live in, software development, product development, there's a lot of engineers who don't have any psychological training as they go through the normal school path, right? The learning journey. And learning to talk about difficult things is something that if we don't get it at home from our family, it's quite hard to get it later on when we are already adults and have formed all kinds of patterns on how to approach or not the difficult topics, right? So I was thinking as you were describing the story that the story is also coherent with the theory that people might just not have the necessary tools to talk about the things that bother them, right?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think there's this widespread misconception that we're all somehow professional, and as professionals, we only talk about professional things, and there's a bucket there, where you put those things, and the other bits, the more ugly bits about being human, they somehow don't belong in that bucket. That's not how it works, though, because we don't leave our lives back at home, or we don't leave ourselves back at home. It's the same person turning up to work. It's the same person going back. So, it's that one person. So if there's something affecting you emotionally, or if it's affecting you because, you're not getting along with someone, then it's going to show up in your professional side as well. So you can't, that's a false dichotomy. And you're very right. We don't have, I don't think it's just engineers. I think a lot of us do not have that emotional vocabulary or that understanding that, we can come and talk about these things. We can express our needs. We can discuss boundaries about what's acceptable and what's not. And so it's great if a team level coach can help facilitate some of this, like bring it to the light and talk about it. It's not going to be an easy conversation, but we learn something about ourselves and about the team in the process, and we're better for it.
Absolutely. I wanted to refer to the nonviolent communication approach or set of methods and tools. We'll put the link on the show notes so that people can find it easily. But it is true that exactly what you were saying, that we are not all born with the ability of tackling the difficult human topics that we anyway all need to be able to tackle if we are to have a long-term relationship with anyone, be it a spouse, a partner, or anybody at work, a colleague with whom we interact on a regular basis. So it's a very important set of skills that we need to acquire.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for sharing this story, Meena.
That's great. Thank you.
Hi there, Agile friends. Thank you for sticking around. This year's first global summit dedicated to the product owner role in Scrum will have some amazing keynotes and 2 tracks filled with first-hand stories and experiences for product owners to learn more about that critical Scrum role. We'll have Roman Pichler, author and product expert, who'll be answering your questions and sharing the most important aspects of the product owner role. We'll also have Colleen Johnson talking about why roadmaps are probably making your life much harder than it needs to be, and what to do instead. This talk was quite a success in Agile Online Summit 2022, and Colleen has learned some new tricks, tools, techniques that she will share with us when it comes to roadmaps for the product owner role. And we will also have Henrik Nyberg, author of Scrum and Kanban from the Trenches, as well as one of the creators of the Spotify model. So come in and listen to his stories. And we'll also have, of course, 2 tracks with many more sessions and even some live sessions. The 2 tracks will cover practices every product owner should know, where we'll be hosting conversations on topics that product owners need to be familiar with, like backlog refinement, planning, and much more. The second track will be on metrics, measuring product and personal success as a product owner. As product owners, it's crucial to have a clear understanding of what are the metrics that drive success for us, and of course also for the products and businesses that we work with, and we need to continuously measure and optimize those metrics. So in this track, we'll be sharing what's working and what's not in the area of measuring success for product owners. We will also have the opportunity to network with our peers. It's a network event, of course, so get your tickets and join our Slack. Go to bit.ly/Product Owner 2023. That's all one word, all lowercase. As always, we will have free tickets and VIP tickets, which will give you long-term access to the content of this summit. So check them out at bit.ly/Product Owner 2023. All lowercase, all one word. I'll see you on the summit floor. Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow.